Hi, and welcome to Just Another View. So basically, I'm going to be doing my interpretation on the COVID press conference, which happened at Christmas. I'm going to split it into 3 episodes, okay? So the first one is going to be about the hospitals being overwhelmed. The second one is going to be about the graphs by JVT. And the last one is going to be on the vaccine, okay? So hope you find it as interesting as I found it. So here we go.
Ivy, thank you very much. Let's go to Jonathan from South London. And this is, Jonathan asks, given the high rates of COVID infections and hospital admissions, why has the government decided not to reopen the Nightingale hospitals?
This is a very, very good question. This is a great question. In fact, this should be the only question, frankly, to be asked. Because I'm going to go back to this, the very beginning. The reason for lockdown was as not to overwhelm the hospitals. We cannot control the virus. The whole point was not to overwhelm the hospitals. Hence, it was built. So when the NHS is getting overwhelmed, we move people onto there. But the world goes on because 99.5% of the population will be mild. So that's a very good question.
Actually, as far as I know, Jonathan, I can tell you, we are going to be making sure that the Nightingale hospitals are available. They are certainly are available, but they're there not to be used immediately as long as the other provision is still there. But
what does BJ just say right there? It's there if we need it. So it means we don't need it. It means that hospitals are not overwhelmed right now then, are they? Because we don't need it. So why the hell are we in lockdown?
Steve, I know you've been working on this very closely.
Yes, thank you, Jonathan. So the Nightingale hospitals have obviously been there over the course of the year. They are our insurance policy. They're as our last resort. And indeed, we asked all the Nightingale hospitals a few weeks ago to be ready to take patients if that was required.
So let me get this. So the Nightingale Hospital has been ready for emergency if it needs to be used. And I say this again, why the hell do they keep going on about hospitals being overwhelmed and locking us down? Why?
And indeed, some of them are already doing that in Manchester, taking step-down patients, in Exeter, managing COVID patients, and in other places, managing diagnostics, for instance, and diagnostic services.
Do you know what? That's good news. I'm glad that that's some common sense. In Manchester, in the other places you just mentioned, I'm glad.
What we've learnt over the year is that we can use the Nightingales for a variety of purposes, as I've just explained. So we will be keeping those purposes under review. Our first steps, though, in managing the extra demands on the NHS are to expand capacity within existing hospitals. That's the best way to use our staff. And then, if needed, we can also put in place mutual aid between hospitals and healthcare organisations. That's exactly what's happening in London, the South East and East of England as we speak. But as the Prime Minister has said, it's critical that those Nightingale hospitals are there if they are needed.
From what he's saying, this is the press conference right here. I'm taking it, not from my words, from his words. The hospitals are not overwhelmed because they're coping. That's what that says to me. They are coping. But apparently the Nightingale hospitals are ready to take on more people. They've been there for the whole year. And yet again, that's another beautiful thing and very good thing that they've done. Very good that the Nightingale hospitals are there set up and ready. So that means we've got no problem. That's quite impressive. This is the simplicity of all of this right here. Everywhere is not overwhelmed. This is a national emergency. So if one part is occupied, is to capacity, or they consider coming to capacity, then you move patients to another location, no matter how far it is. It's a very simple thing. If it's all organized, everywhere is not overwhelmed at the same time, everywhere isn't. And when all that is all exhausted, then you can go into the Nightingale. And they are thinking about doing that as well. So bravo, 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 beautiful. You have the Nightingale. So what is the problem? Why is there so much talk? Why is it all being dramatized? Everything. You have enough capacity. He's just said it. So what is the problem? Or which is the truth? Come on. Let's listen on.
And finally, Stephen Powers, there are unnerving pictures of ambulances queuing outside hospitals. Could you just characterise how close the NHS is to capacity? Does it feel overstretched in parts? And would you expect specifically the London Nightingale, where things seem to be so bad, to be needed anytime soon?
These are very good questions. Okay, so Mr. NHS is speaking.
Steve, sorry, forgive me.
Just to go to Sam's question on NHS pressures. So I think, as we've all commented, the NHS is under significant pressure this Christmas and New Year period, and that's particularly so, as I've said, in those areas of the country, such as London, as you've noted, where we've seen rapid rises in infections, predominantly because of the new variant of COVID.
So we've all acknowledged there's pressures on the NHS, but they are not being overwhelmed. Okay.
So the NHS in London, as indeed it does around the country, has tried and tested plans in place to manage surges in activity. And of course, those have been refined further during the year, as we've learned from the first wave of COVID. Those plans are being implemented as we speak. They involve, again, as I've said, firstly, expanding capacity within existing hospitals, ensuring that mutual aid is in place between different healthcare organisations, so patient, staff, sometimes equipment can be moved around. And that's the right thing to do clinically because it's the best way of managing patients. Again, the Nightingale in London is being readied, and if it is required, then we will use it. But the first step is capacity within existing hospitals.
Now, even though we have all this, he's just saying the hospitals have ways to manage the capacity. The Nightingales are there if needed. So why do you people keep on going about overwhelming the hospitals? Why do they keep telling the 99.5% to stay in lockdown?
But I think it's really important for me to emphasise, as I've said already tonight, that the real key to reducing pressure on the NHS is if everybody complies with the social distancing measures that are in place. It's only by reducing infection rates that a couple of weeks later, we will start to see a similar reduction in hospitalisations and the number of people in hospital. So it's really critical that everybody does what actually we've all been doing throughout the year, no matter how tough it is, and stick with those restrictions.
No matter how hard it is. Seriously? No matter how hard it is? A year of lockdown. And you in the 99.5%. How are you meant to feel? Let me say this. If everyone was on full on, if no one lost their businesses or no one lost their jobs, okay, you know what? We're all staying for however long we're not staying for. But the fact is, you can't just say, no matter how hard it feels. Do you realize that the consequences of the lockdown, by the way, because I don't think that's ever kind of really looked at, because you just think about the 0.5%, and forget about the 20-odd% of people that will probably never recover from this lockdown. Probably never recover. Have you looked at that? Have you even thought about it? No matter how hard it is. Seriously? No matter how hard it is? I think that's a bit unfair. It's a bit unfair to say that, man. It's very unfair. In a nutshell, according to what this whole press conference on the 23rd December, they're telling me the hospitals have never been overwhelmed. In a nutshell, never. Because the Nightingale hospitals have never really been up to capacity, have they? Some of them haven't been used. Seriously? Wow. Amazing. Anyway, and on that note, my advice is, don't be fearful. Just be careful. Be safe.